She did not look away from the couple at the high table. That was the part nobody understand. The hall was full, evening air, thick with jollof rice, a live band walking through something celebratory. Crowd on the floor moving in that easy, shoulder-first way that seems the drinks had been flowing in a while. Fiona stood in the middle of it and did not move. At the high table, a bride and groom were feeding each other cake. The bride was radiant, natural hair pinned and gold flowers, white lace, a smile so wild it looked like something she had been keeping safe for a long time and had finally decided to spend. The groom tilted his head to whisper in her ear. Fiona knew that tilt. She had studied it in a way you study something that belongs to you without meaning to. He whispered and the bride laughed. Fiona's free hand went slowly to her throat. Then the groom looked up across the room. His face found hers. His smile did not fall. That was almost worse than anything else that happened that night. A woman appeared at Fiona's shoulder and said quietly in Yoruba, "You should not have come. I told you not to come." Fiona did not answer. She lifted a glass of water from a passing tray. Her hand was perfectly steady. She drank slowly. She set the glass down. She turned and walked towards the exit with her back straight. Behind her, she could hear the drums, celebration, a room full of people who all knew before she did. Before I go any further, if this is your first time in this channel, subscribe right now and hit that notification bell. Now let me take you back to where it really started, because that wedding is not the beginning. The beginning is far worse. 3 years earlier, in Port Harcourt, an NYC orientation camp, dusty and chaotic and full of strangers pretending to be confident, Fiona Okoro arrived with one bag and a trolley. One of her trolley tire was faulty. It became faulty between the bus park and the camp gate. She was crushed in the middle of a yard, walking at the wheel with her fingers when a shadow fell across the ground in front of her. The girl who appeared did not ask permission. She bent down, wrapped both hands around the wheel, and held it steadily. "Turn it," she said. The girl stood and brushed dust from her nails. "You look like you could be a good friend to me," the girl said out loud. "I look like I could use a functioning bag if my bag is being fixed," Fiona replied. The laugh that came out of the two girls were too large for the situation. She actually stepped backward and sat down in the dust. Then she laughed harder at that. Fiona looked at her sitting in the dirt in the middle of all that camp noise, laughing at herself. She felt something move in her chest. Small, barely a movement. She laughed too. Fiona joined in the laughter. Her name was Maya Usaze. By lights out, they had claimed neighboring bunks. By the end of the first week, everyone at camp knew them as friends. 6 months into NYC posting, Maya brought Fiona to a birthday gathering in GRA. At some point in the evening, she pulled her across the room and stopped in front of a man near the bar. She said, "My cousin's friend. Adams, this is Fiona, the one I told you about." The man turned. He was good looking in a composed, unhurried way, but what Fiona noticed was the quality of his attention. When he looked at her, he did not look past her, not at the room, not at the door. He looked at her specifically. He spoke to her for most of that evening. He laughed at things she said without apologizing for finding them funny. When the party ended, he asked for her phone number and she gave it to him. In the car going home, Maya screamed for 30 straight seconds. "You're welcome," she said. Fiona told her to keep quiet. She was smiling at the window so hard her face hurt. Adams and Fiona built their relationship carefully. Calls, then visits, then a gradual deepening of two people who had decided without yet saying so that they are choosing each other. She met his friends, he met her colleagues. It was slow and it was real, and Fiona, who did not fall easily, fell completely. He proposed at a small restaurant in town. No performance, no audience. He set the ring on the table between them and said, "I've been sure for a while, I just wanted to get it right." Fiona pressed both hands to her chest. "Yes," she said. She agreed. Fiona called Maya from the restaurant bathroom. Maya picked up on the second ring. When Fiona said he proposed, what came from Maya's end was not words. It was 30 seconds of screaming. Fiona held the phone away from her ears and listened to her best friend celebrate on her behalf and thought, this is what it means to have someone who is fully in your support. After the engagement, the arrangements settled into the pattern. Everyone returned back to their different locations. Fiona in Lagos, Adams in Port Harcourt, building in logistics company, and whenever Fiona could not reach him, whenever the visits fell through or the call did not connect, there was Maya as an alternative to reach Adams, calling him when Fiona could not, passing messages, keeping communication between Fiona and Adams. It made sense. It was practical. It was what a best friend could do, right? But something cold disappeared approaching, something cold, unexplainable, and invincible. The silent treatment started 8 months after the engagement. Adam's voice in his phone, slightly flatter, slightly elsewhere. Weekend plan cancelled with flimsy excuses. Maya's communication with her reduced drastically. Fiona consoled herself and told herself it was work stress. Distance between them, normal things. Then a woman she barely knew, someone from an industry event months ago, sent her a message on Instagram with no words, just a screenshot. Maya's close friend's Instagram story, a story Fiona was not on. In the photo, Maya was leaning against a white Toyota Hilux. Fiona knew that car. She knew the dents above the passenger's wheel. She knew the faded sticker on the rear. Adam's hand was on Maya's waist. They were both laughing, not fake laughing. They were actually laughing for real, genuine laughter. The timestamp on the Instagram story was 6:43 p.m. on a Saturday. At 6:43 on that same Saturday, Adams had messaged Fiona by text and he was at a family dinner in Owerri and the network was very poor. That was the information Adams had given Fiona. Fiona did not call anyone. She opened her banking app, booked a flight to Port Harcourt for the following Saturday and told no one she was coming. Then she set her phone face down on the bed and sat very still for a long time, breathing slowly the way she had taught herself to breathe when the things happening was too large to respond to immediately. She had taught herself this survival technique at 18 when her father left. She had needed it a few times since. She had thought she might not need it again, but she was wrong about that. She landed in Port Harcourt on a Saturday morning and went directly to Adam's apartment. He was not there. His neighbor looked at Fiona with the careful expression of someone who has information they are not sure whether to give out. The neighbor said Adams had not been home since Thursday, but on Wednesday evening, she had seen someone leaving. That your friend, the light-skinned one, the one with the key. Fiona thanked her. She gave the driver Maya's mother's address. Mama Maya opened the door. She was a small, neat woman. She looked at Fiona standing in the morning heat with her bag and her composed face. And something moved behind her eyes. Not surprised, something she had been waiting. She raised her right hand and pressed her palm gently against Fiona's cheek. The way you touch someone who has already been hot and does not fully know it yet. Maya is not here, she said, but come inside. Maya's mother spoke carefully, the kindest version of the truth. She told Fiona everything that happened and was hidden away from her without omitting any information. In the past 4 months, Fiona had suspected it before she knew it. She had told Maya to stop. Maya had not stopped. Mama Maya told Fiona the part that shocked and pained her the most. She said Adam's family are aware. His mother had already met Maya. The introduction has been done. The quiet pre-engagement type of ceremony happened 2 weeks ago. And 2 weeks ago, Fiona had been on the phone with Adams arguing warmly about whether to do the wedding in Lagos or Enugu. He laughed and said Enugu people were stubborn. She laughed and said he was right. 2 weeks ago, Adam's mother was meeting her best friend Maya in a sitting room in Owerri. Fiona stood up, she thanked Mama Maya and she meant it. She knew what it had cost this woman to name the wound rather than look away. She picked up her bag and walked out into the Saturday heat. She did not cry. She stood in the streets and took a deep breath in and out, slowly and deliberately. Then she took out her phone. She did not call Adams. She did not call Maya. She called a logistics company. She had a ring packaged on Monday with no notes. She paid for next day delivery and watched it leave her hands. Then she applied for the transfer of her firm's Abuja's office, and 6 weeks later, she was gone. What Fiona built in Abuja was not a rebuilt version of the life she had lost. It was something quiet and more deliberate. The way you build what you had learned the hard way. What happened when you build around a person rather than around yourself. Fiona passed the ICANN exams. She changed her place of work. She changed again, this time into an industry, joining a fintech company called Roblox Capital. 3 years after working with this company, Fiona got promoted. The promotion was unexpected because she had focused and concentrated on her work. She refused to allow heartbreak caused by someone who doesn't cherish her to distract her from her work. She had not spoken to Adams and Maya since Port Harcourt. In her 3rd year in Roblox, the company began looking for acquisition. They wanted to move into logistics. The target was a Port Harcourt firm established 4 years ago, struggling for the last 2 years. They lost a contract, capital tied up badly, creditors moving in. The firm was called Ekem and Partners. Fiona read the name on the briefing document. She read it twice. Then she put it down and looked at the ceiling of her office for a long moment. Then she gathered the files, prepared her analysis and scheduled the meeting. On Thursday morning, she was at the head of the boardroom table when the door opened and Adams walked in. She watched him read her name on the briefing document, watched the sequence cross his face, the reading, the pause, the rereading, the moment it connected. He looked up and she was already looking at him. She ran the meeting accordingly. She asked questions that needed asking. She thanked them for their time and she said the review would take 3 weeks. That evening, she walked through the acquisition files. She was on her third file, a creditor's document containing personal guarantees, when she stopped. The name on the guarantee was not a bank, it was an individual who had co-signed a loan for Ikem and Partners 18 months ago. Had put their own name and their own savings behind the business in trouble and taking personal financial risks so that the business could survive. The name was Maya Osaze. Fiona sat with this for a long time. Fiona didn't wish this for her friend Maya, even though Maya betrayed her. The story in her head had been simple. A man who betrayed her, a friend who helped him do it, both of them now living happily inside what they have built from the ruins of her life. This was not that story. Maya had backed Adam's business with her own savings and the business was failing. And if you knew where to look in these files, which Fiona knew exactly where to look, there were small signs that Adams had not been faithful to this situation either. He was playing games with his wife's financial support, unknowing to Maya, the footprints of a man who was still not being honest with the woman now carrying his debts. Maya didn't steal a good life. She had traded one complicated life for another one. She was financially exposed and drained by a man who was still not what he had promised to be. Fiona put the file down. She had expected when she saw him again to feel something sharp, satisfaction, maybe vindication. She had imagined sitting at the head of the table and feeling the weight of having becoming this while he became that. What she felt was simpler, heavier and harder to put down. She saw two women, one who had trusted completely, which was herself, and one who had known what she was doing all along, which was Maya, her supposed best friend. Both used by the same man in different ways at different times. One for access, one for money, neither of them the thing he had promised to be. She picked up a pen and she opened the review documents and she began to write. The deal she structured was unusual. A recovery clause requiring operational benchmarks within 18 months. Conditions she had never seen in an acquisition file before, and one clause buried in the closing documents, written in clean and careful language, releasing the personal guarantor from liability, releasing the co-signer from the debts she had backed with her savings. Maya's name had been cleared. Fiona cleared Maya's name despite the betrayal. Adam signed everything placed in front of him without appearing to understand what the woman at the head of the table had just done. A month after closing, an envelope arrived at Maya's Port Harcourt address. One document inside the guarantee release with a yellow sticky note in handwriting Maya would have known anyway. The note said, "You still owe me a proper apology." Nothing else, no explanation, just one sentence. The kind that means, "I see what happened to you, I have not forgotten what you did to me, but I am not going to let him take the last of what you had." Maya smiled and instantly became emotional after reading the text. In a bedroom in Abuja, in the middle of the hardest decision Fiona had made since the day she booked a flight to Port Harcourt to find out if the worst thing she feared was true. It was true actually. And she survived it. And the girl who helped it happen survived it too. Narrowly and not entirely her own fault. Sometimes you don't pay evil for evil.